everybody. Welcome back to Power of the Mind, brought to you by Granite Mountain Behavioral Healthcare. I'm excited because we started talking about sex addiction, but it just seemed like a standalone topic. So, Madi, you're back. Let's get into it.
All right. So, sex addiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's start by just diving in. Sex addiction, where does it stem from, right? The unresolved emotional pain or trauma or these deep-seated fears. It's a way to cope with feelings of inadequacy, loneliness, or rejection. For many, it's about seeking a temporary escape from these painful emotions. There's often a connection to early life experiences like those core beliefs that we described, whether it's exposure to inappropriate sexual content at a young age, sexual abuse, or neglect, or having these negative beliefs. These experiences can distort a person's understanding of what true intimacy is, right? It gets distorted, right? And it can lead to compulsive behaviors, an attempt to feel more sense of control or worth. It's like the drug addict, right? The drug addict is getting the drug for what?
Right.
To get high, right?
But unfortunately, with the drug addict, though, what worked yesterday isn't going to work today. You need more, right? Is that kind of the same?
And sex addiction will get worse if you don't look at it. You can't run from addiction, right? And especially sex addiction, it's like the functioning addict, right? They can get by for so long until it becomes this state of where it's no longer functional.
So what does the cycle of sex addiction look like in somebody?
So the cycle of sex addiction often begins with like a trigger.
Okay.
Something that brings up a feeling of stress or emotional pain. To cope, the individual is going to seek out like the sexual activity is a way to numb these feelings or to feel a sense of relief. After engaging in these behaviors, there's usually a period of like some shame or guilt or self-loathing, which only adds more to this emotional distress, right? It's like you just keep spinning in the cycle. You just keep going between self-hatred and denial.
It's like, I don't have a problem. And then you give into it. And now you're more upset and you're so upset with yourself for letting yourself do this.
Absolutely. It's important to note that while the behavior might provide some temporary relief, right, it never truly addresses the underlying emotional wounds that are driving the addiction in the first place.
So it's, because I started thinking about, the functioning addict. We touched on that a little bit, and it's, you think, I'm good. I know I have this problem, but I'm still going to get married. I still, love this person, and I'm going to change. Right. But how? Because that's going to be pulling at you. Right. And does this go back to kind of that core belief or what was the root cause of this?
Yeah, you've got to explore and be open to finding what it is you're running from. Why do you continue down this path of self-hatred, right? And most of the time, it's again back to a lesson repeats itself until you learn what you needed to learn, right? It's about being open to that. But for partners, right, it can severely strain relationships. Partners of sex addiction, let's talk about that for a minute. So they feel hurt, confused, especially when these behaviors are hidden or it involves infidelity. The secrecy of it, the deceit of it that often accompany sex addiction can erode the foundation of a relationship. It can literally erode it.
So do you see sex addiction as, you have a partner who's just, they need sex all the time. And that's, okay, great. I'm an active partner. I'm going to be able to give them that. Is that enough for this person with sex addiction to be able and ready anytime that they are looking for it? Or does it morph into something different? Is that enough for a person with sex addiction? I married somebody who I'm dating somebody who just wants it all the time. So that's enough for me.
Sometimes. It's hard to say exactly black and white. What I do know, though, is that with continuing in a relationship with somebody who is in sex addiction while you are a partner of a sex addict, right? It's discombobulating and confusing, right? The wives, husbands who have formed the belief themselves of, I'm not enough for my partner, because sometimes sex addicts are addicted to the game too. What I mean by that is like the lifestyle that it accompanies, the lies, the getting ready, spraying on the cologne, the getting
The challenge, the conquest.
Absolutely. Just like drug addicts get addicted to that lifestyle, the game, right? It's about having to change that full lifestyle and realizing if it's costing me issues, if it's causing me these consequences, right? Is it worth exploring that maybe I have an issue?
And what are the red flags? So I'm a wife, we've been married. And is it something that comes on? Like, could it come on after, like, you marry a spouse, everything's great, and then these behaviors start arising? Or is it something that maybe it's there and they've tried to deal with it and it's hidden itself for a while? What are red flags as a wife or a husband that you start seeing in your partner that can make you go, okay, hold on, there's something wrong here. It's not me. This is definitely a them problem.
So when someone is engaging in like risky behaviors and you know that that's not that person, that their countenance has changed, that their demeanor has changed, that they are no longer themselves, right? What can be confusing is just like the addict can be functional for quite a while, you can have a place of functional sex addict for a while. And until it comes to dysfunctional and until it starts having these natural consequences, right? About how does it affect my relationship? If it negatively affects your relationship, you've got to be willing to look at that. And some red flags that could come up for that, for instance, could be, excessive pornography, excessive infidelity, them cheating on you constantly, using the income that you guys have for paying for cyber sex or paying for porn, and you can't have your bills paid for because they're acting out from this sex addiction. So there's a lot of ways that these natural consequences can come on from sex addiction, right? So putting red flags on it, there's quite a bit. And I think the part is if you get to a place in a relationship where you're emotionally cheating, right? We can all see where the person stops being able to show up for you, right? They get to a point where they're not engaged in those activities like they used to be, or where they're having sex with others and not you because they're avoiding that true intimacy. It's then just about that constant sex, right? And it can become this cycle that will just keep going until they look into either treatment, right? There's options for treatment that don't necessarily have to involve going to treatment, right? There is healing from it.
So one thing, when I think of addiction, I always think of this worked today, but I need more tomorrow. And you often hear stories of like extreme, taking things to a whole nother level. Is that something you see with sexual addiction, or is it, it's just about the thrill of the hunt for me or whatever? But do you see it? That's where you start seeing the kinks come in, maybe because of that sexual addiction. And it's just trying to get that next, this, what I'm doing is not hitting that dopamine anymore. I have to now take it to that level.
Yeah, it gets riskier and can get riskier. It could be where you start off with maybe just porn, and then it starts off with, hey, I'm going to pay for this now, or hey, eventually I'm going to pay for a prostitution, a prostitute, or it can get gradually worse over time, right? Just like addiction, it doesn't start off terrible. It gradually over time becomes where your life becomes unmanageable.
Right. Maybe you just use it a party or two and then it becomes, just this one time before I go to work or whatever. But so I can see that happening. So if this is something that you're experiencing or something that you're noticing in a partner, obviously you said getting services, what does something like that look like?
So, like long-term healing.
Mm-hmm.
So that would come from a level of self-awareness and commitment to personal growth. It's about learning to be vulnerable and building trust, not just with others, but with your own self. Establishing boundaries is crucial, and fostering openness, vulnerability, being honest, developing this sense of self-worth. It's about maybe finding that therapy group, maybe finding a support group or other forms of personal development, but it's about finding something that can help you heal those wounds that you're running from.
Interesting. This is so interesting. It's just, when you think about addiction, you just think about drugs or alcohol. There's so many different forms of addiction. And this one seems so scary to me because it can be so exploited and so taken advantage of by the wrong person or partner or.
So I think the goal, right, the ultimate goal is to move from a place of compulsion and avoidance to a place with genuine connection and intimacy where relationships are based on like mutual respect. I think that's really important. And that's part of where your recovery takes off when you start to do these things.
So if somebody is struggling with this, where do they go? What do? They reach out. They calling you, Madi? They picking up the phone?
They can call me or Granite Mountain. They can be provided with resources. Look online. Another great option is Sex Addiction Anonymous is a great support group I would recommend looking into if you're struggling with this.
I would have never imagined there was a Sex Addiction Anonymous hotline that you could call. That is amazing to me. It's just, and again, as I touch on being a parent, pay attention. Don't set your kids up for, and I hate to put it back on the parent, but sometimes we do dumb things and we don't even realize that we treat our kids the way our parents treated us, or hug your kid, or, just, and as I think as a parent, even if you don't think there's a problem, do you think therapy, just as a parent, talking and just kind of making sure and checking in with yourself to make sure you're on the right track?
Absolutely.
You do that for me. You're my person. So you always keep me on the right. I always start thinking better about other people's mental health or things that we say in the heat of the moment, how they can affect people for a long time. And so I always try to be very careful because a lot of times, even after cheer practice, I'll get in the car and I'll be like, oh, why did I say that? I should not have said it that way. But you're frustrated or you're upset. And I think as a parent too, that goes the same way. It's like you talked about with that phone call, the mom was on the phone call and couldn't give their child the attention they needed. And that was a trigger for them.
Mm-hmm. And those triggers are going to happen often. It's about helping our kids learn to challenge these triggers and reform these beliefs from I'm not worthy to I'm loved.
Absolutely. If you were regular mom, regular kid, you're married, you're raising your kid, however, do you believe in just therapy just because?
I'm an advocate. I'm a big advocate because I feel like it can't cause harm, right? And everybody needs somebody to talk to and somebody to where you feel is not going to have a biased opinion and be very non-judgmental.
Yep. I've learned more and more just doing these episodes with you that therapy is a good thing. And I think so many times people in my generation and beyond, and even people aren't, they look at therapy as a bad thing. Oh, you're in therapy? Yikes. What happened to you? Where it's like, I'm in therapy because I believe in great mental health and this helps keep me there. Excellent. So it doesn't have to be a problem.
No, not at all. It can be second nature You know, I have patients as young as 9-year-old that need therapy, right?
Mhm.
And then I have some adults who, during therapy, just continue that maintenance stage, right?
Yeah, it's almost like seeing your doctor once a year or, every 6 months or going to the dentist. I don't have any pain, but it's just nice for you to get in there and look around a little bit, make sure, because I think it's a good point. So call Madi, call Granite Mountain Behavioral Healthcare, and I'm already can't wait for next week. But
Thank you.
thank
I
you so much.
appreciate it.
Thanks so much for coming in, and we will see you next time on Power of the Mind.